Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching To The Point with your host, Kriti Mishra. The new agriculture laws usher in the long-awaited reforms that have been part of the agricultural reform thinking for 2 decades now, when the Shankar Lal Guru Committee first advocated for a more liberal agricultural marketing structure in the year 2001. The government has said it is ready to discuss and consider with an open mind if the farmer organizations feel that any provision of the 3 new laws is against their interest. And to further discuss about the new agriculture reforms, I'm joined by eminent agriculture economist and member of Niti Aayog, Dr. Ramesh Chand. So, welcome to Rajya Sabha Television.
Thank you.
So, we've been seeing some farmer groups protesting against the new agriculture laws. The government has said it is ready to discuss all the issues and look for a resolution. The government has also said that it is ready to accommodate few of their demands. What kind of dilution will it have, and how do we fully unlock the potential of these reforms?
You see, as of now, farmers have expressed their apprehensions about 3-4 things. The first thing is regarding new Trading Act. Farmers feel that the condition of registration of trader is very, very weak. They want that it need to be replaced by more stringent condition for registration of traders. Their second concern is that in the trade area, there is no cess, there is no market fee. This will put private trade in an advantageous position over the APMC, and the field is not level. This is their argument, and there is some grain into it. So this is the second argument which they have been making. The third is a sort of apprehensions that if private trade will come, mandis will gradually close down, everybody will take produce to private traders, then MSP may be phased out, and all sort of, I think, stressed argument that corporate may take over even land of the farmers. They are feeling like this. But coming to the provision of the act, they have one concern that right now, if there is a dispute, the authority or the power for resolution of that dispute is given to SDM or then to district collectors. And law states that you cannot go to court. Farmers feel as if by this denial to go to court, they will be deprived of their right to seek justice. So these are their concern, and I can come to these one by one. You see, every provision of the act, it has its own merit, it has its own limitations. When these laws were being framed, why this condition for registration of traders was kept weak? It was done intentionally, and I give you the reason. The vision of this new trading law was that a farmer himself become business person, his son can undertake agribusiness, a farmer organization can take agribusiness. Therefore, if you put stringent conditions that a trader is required to give bank guarantee, he is required to have some kind of experience in trades, then children of farmer will not get this opportunity to become traders. So this vision, I consider it a great vision, that to make farmer as a trader, which I think is very, very important, as we are seeing it already happening in case of dairy sector, milk sector, that you will find in every village some rural youth beside cooperative and corporate is also doing this dairy business. So this is, I would say that if we replace it with more stringent conditions, that trader is required to give deposits, so that if he tried to fleece a farmer, he can be tracked and money can be recovered from his accounts. So there is a trade-off. So I look at this provision like this, and probably nobody has given this message to farmer. I wrote it in my papers that if you change the provision, you deny yourself right to become the business person, then trade will remain with the traders. Trade will not come to the farmer. This is the first provision. Regarding second provision where farmer want to go to court, again it was debated with experts. The feeling was that farmers are in a relatively weaker position compared to an agribusiness firm in terms of seeking justice through court. With all due respect to court, you know how much time it take in the civil court,
Yes.
how much cost of lawyer, stamp duty, all those things have to be filled up. SDM and district collector, they are still employee of your state. So they are under control of the center. And you will just find that in a democratic system, the ruling political system will not or at least avoid doing anything which is seen as denying justice to the farmers. So it was just thought that this SDM is more approachable compared to court, and farmer can always go with their elected representative group of farmers if some injustice is done to them. So a period was specified that within 3 weeks justice will be delivered, and SDM has all powers, and we are seeing this already happening. That how quickly the order of the SDM has made the trader to make the payment which was being denied to the farmers. So this was the reason behind keeping it. But if farmers want that, they want to have the right to go to court, it can be had there. But in my personal opinion, I think that is not very favorable kind of proposition for the farmers. They are in a weaker position in terms of seeking justice through court compared to an agribusiness firm. So this was
All right,
second.
sir. At this juncture, I'd like to talk about the small and marginal farmers who own less than 2 acres of farmland. Now, these smallholder and these farmers make over 80% of the agrarian population. How will this new agriculture reform break the shackles and give them new rights and opportunities?
You see, after some time you will see right now if their percentage is 80%, after some time it will become 90%. Only few farmer will be left who will be large. So when we make any policy, it is for the farmers, and farmer means that since vast majority of them is small and marginal, it is catered, it is designed in such a way that it takes care of their interests. Now I give you one example. Suppose a small farmer or marginal farmer want to go for diversification. He want to grow vegetable or fruits. This crop does not mature in one day, unlike wheat and paddy, that there is a harvest ready and in one day you harvest everything. You will find that 20% vegetable mature today, 20% after 1 week, 20% after 2 weeks. Like that it is spread. Now a small farmer who has put only say 1000 square meter area under vegetable and who is harvesting 50 kg or even 100 kg of vegetable, you can't expect him, it is not economical for him to go to a distant market. Punjab Haryana situation is different. Just at 5-6 kilometers you may get a market. In many places you don't get market even for 20 kilometers. Roads are not there. So it is not viable, economically viable for a smallholder to go to that 20-kilometer market and sell his produce. Instead, again I take example of milk, that in the village there is a collection center. Farmer can sell in the village itself. There are 3-4 channels. There is a competition. So if he has small lot, then he has this option that rather than taking it through APMC route, he can just sell it in the village itself, in nearby place to an integrator, or he can himself collect produce of 4-5 farmers. They can make a sort of farmer producer organizations. So I feel that when these laws were created, special care was taken that since right now maybe our small farmer, they were nearly 85% in 15-16, why now it might be 90%, and in future almost everyone except except few will be small and marginal farmers. So law are just designed not ignoring the reality of the agriculture. Small farmer and marginal farmer is a reality. And unfortunately, we always present him as if that is our weakness. That can be our strength. Lot of advantage in agriculture comes from labor. In fact, if you look at farm size productivity debate, there it started in 1970, and my last paper of 2012, there is inverse relationship between farm size and productivity. It was there in 70, it holds in 12 also. After that, I have not seen a study. Small farmers are more diversified compared to large farmers. They make more use of commercial input per hectare basis than large farmers. So we should not underestimate capacity of our small farmer and our marginal farmer. In fact, in China's farmer, they are not even as large as our farmer. And farmers in Japan are not even half of what are our farmers. That is the reality of Asia. Asian farm consists of smallholders, and they have some great advantage. We should provide them opportunity to use this advantage, and we should provide them environment where they can make use of the labor and skill which they have. But they lack is they do not have adequate capital. They sometimes do not have access to modern input. They are not in a position to do bargaining in the markets. So through these laws, you find that there is a possibility of these kind of things. If a farmer so wish, he can enter into contract farming. Already so many examples in case of Karnataka, that for some vegetable you have agreement with this firm, for another vegetable you have with other kind of thing. So these laws, I will say that still a large farmer may not need this law, but small and marginal farmer definitely need a new system. He require a new kind of arrangement if he is to move in 21st century.
Sir, as you mentioned about FPOs, now we understand that Centre wants 10,000 FPOs to be set up by the year 2024. Where do we stand right now, and the importance of FPOs in realizing the benefits of these reforms?
We started this FPO few years back. Some FPO were created, they closed them, but some FPOs are quite successful also. And many of the FPOs have turned into farmer producer company. In fact, real benefit of FPO is realized when you make FPO as a farmer producer company. Then you have so many exemptions and you can just act like a industrialist. Those kind of privileges are there. Right now in the country, the figures are that we have something between 4,500 to 5,000 successfully running FPO. So even if we set up 10,000 FPO, even if one FPO cover 4 to 5 villages, we will be covering only 50,000 villages. We have 2.5 lakh villages in this country, habitated villages in this country. So FPO is one model. At other place, maybe farmer would like to make use of cooperatives, as they are making use of cooperative in Gujarat. At other place, maybe they would like to form some other kind of self-help group. So in India, we need to think in terms of multiple options. We should not lie that, okay, we have now talked about FPO and everything will be done by FPO. FPO is very, very important in the changing context, and we should see to it that as many FPO as possible we should promote, but at the same time also enhance and revitalize cooperatives, enhanced role of cooperative. Many areas are more suitable for cooperative and self-help group kind of thing. So we need to follow these multiple options.
So at this point in time, I'd also like to touch upon MSP, which has been one of these sticking issues. Now, the government has allayed all the concerns of the farmers over MSP. The government has also implemented the recommendations of the report of the Swaminathan Committee, giving MSP of 1.5 times to the cost to the farmers. But it is estimated that only a fraction of India's farmers are able to sell their crops at MSP. Do you think we can have some alternative mechanism?
It can be there. It's not that it can't be. In fact, some suggestions were made by us and they were tried also, like Madhya Pradesh tried Bhavantar.
Yes.
So, you see, in the case of MSP, the situation is that we need to change our mindset in two, three ways. First is that MSP is very, very important, but we should not think in the direction of that only through MSP we can get better prices. Competition give the best prices, and that we have seen in many commodity. Sometimes you find that in some market farmer fetches better price than MSP. So first is that we should promote competition, but still need for MSP will remain. But you look at any country, whether USA, whether China or EU, you don't give state support to as many as 23 crop or 50 crops. You select 4 or 5 crops of national importance and then you give strong support to them because they are crops of national importance. Everybody eats sugar except diabetic people, so sugarcane is important. Cotton is important for us, for textile industry, everybody wear clothes. Rice and wheat are important because they are staple food. Almost every household eat either wheat or rice, if not on regular basis, some bread or sometime. In some places, of course, coarse grains are also a staple food, but for country as a whole. So, but I want to say is that we should see to it that where center can provide support of MSP and where state should come forward in terms of providing MSP. My personal view is that crops of national importance, the responsibility should rest with center. When it comes to crop of regional importance, Bajra is important for Haryana, Rajasthan and some other state. Ragi is important for Karnataka and some part of Maharashtra. There, the state should take this responsibility, and already it was worked out that state should come forward. So I feel that center and state should work in unison. State should not leave everything to center, and center should also not say that everything in some cases should be done by states. So that's why we say that to say that agriculture is state subject, agriculture is center, we require both. As I have given you example of MSP, that we require involvement of state, we require involvement of center, that at some times we require MSP, particularly when price crashes. Next 4 or 5 years we can continue with MSP if new laws give you a strong competitive framework. At that time we can think of new ways of intervening into market. But agriculture commodities are such that number one, there is annual fluctuation in output. Secondly, their price elasticity of demand is inelastic. Like if there is 5% reduction in production of some commodity, there is a possibility that its price will increase by 50%. So need for government intervention will remain in some form. We can call it MSP, we can call it procurement price, deficiency price. So it will not be taken away.
But so just to add to what you said,
just to price yes, to farmer, we should not rely solely on MSP. We should also rely on market.
Absolutely, sir. And adding to what you said, cost of cultivation per unit of a crop varies state-wise. Often MSP is lower for crops other than paddy and wheat, which forces farmers into distress sale. How do we reorient our farmers for producing more profitable crops?
There is something called that what is the comparative advantage in producing different commodities. If we go by agroclimatic zone, that this is the water status of particular region, this is the soil condition of particular season, this is the climate, what is the best suitable crop in terms of natural endowment. Ideally, those crops should be promoted in those regions. MSP can then be tailored to it. But in the past so many years, because we were having food shortage, we did not pay adequate attention to sustainability aspects. In fact, we have been snatching future of our grandchildren and children to maximize our returns by excessive use of water, by overexploiting groundnut. So I think now time has come when we should bring in sustainability dimension also into it, and then we can tailor our MSP system so that crops which are most suitable in terms of economic profitability, in terms of natural source endowment, they are encouraged in different agroclimatic zone. Already some work is going on. People are working out that in terms of financial price, what is the priority of crop in terms of economic prices and in terms of natural source accounting. If we take into account, but B, the cost we cause to the nature, ultimately we should move into that direction, and MSP can be gradually tailored in that direction.
All right, sir, talking about DBT now. More than 1,10,000 crore rupees have reached the accounts of farmers because of PM Kisan. It has transformed the entire support ecosystem to the farmers. How do we ensure that the benefits of other schemes also reach through this kind of mechanism?
Yes, some people are strongly supporting that we should club all kind of support and give it in the form of DBT. Kirtiji, one issue which comes here is that of tenants.
Yes.
The farmer who cultivate land by taking lease land on lease, for DBT, we do not have any record of those farmers. They don't have even recognition. It is informal tenancy. So first condition there is, and that incidence is increasing. In some of the state, as many as 40% of the farmer out of total farmer, they are the tenant farmers, particularly Telangana, Andhra Pradesh. That is the situation. Country average is a little more than 13%. So first we need to address that if you are making land as a basis for DBT or a household as a basis for DBT, if a landless person is taking land on lease and then you are giving that DBT, it has its own implication. Then second is that what is the basis you decide for it. Now one basis could be as we are giving this PM Kisan, that
Yes.
which is just sort of income that everybody will get 6,000 rupee per year, irrespective of what is the farm size, etc., etc. In case of inputs, you know that there in some of the states, the use of fertilizer is 300 kg per hectare.
Right.
In some of the states, use of fertilizer is only 30 kg per hectare. So when you will actually start giving it, then you just imagine, I'm afraid of a single water type of agitation again, that those who are having much larger benefit of subsidies, will this be acceptable to them? That do they allow that a farmer in Rajasthan who is using just 10 kg of fertilizer, he gets same 2,000 rupees
Yes.
as a direct benefit of fertilizer, and same as a farmer in Punjab is getting who uses much more fertilizer. So these are the issues which complicate the story of DBT. We have talked about it, that how it can be tackled and what kind of views farmers give on this. So it is not that easy as it looks to be, that you give directly this benefit support and of course leakage etc. Is less. It has its advantage, but it also has its limitation and its disadvantage.
Absolutely, sir. We'll have to address all those challenges. But before we end this conversation, sir, COVID-19 pandemic battered the economies across the globe. During the COVID-induced lockdown, agriculture remained the bright spot in overall gloom. In India, business leaders, policymakers are pinning hope on the rural sector for a strong recovery. Going ahead, what are the measures that the government can take to boost rural consumption demand and provide support through budgetary announcements? What do you think, sir? What is your take?
You see, in response to COVID, several times government has come with announcements, like if we look at the biggest safety net in case of India are two. One is this PDS safety net, and second is this Employment Guarantee Act. During COVID, the scope of both these was increased. In case of PDS, the scope was increased so much that eligible beneficiary got 80% of their cereal requirement from this subsidized grains. I think you will not find this kind of example probably anywhere in the world, that 80% requirement of your staple food is met
Yes.
at 2 rupee and 3 rupee a kg, and part of it even free, that kind of thing. So that was first thing which was done. Then in terms of employment also, you know that number of days was increased, that if there is no
Yes.
employment, then you can look for other kind of things. But now things are coming back to normal. Economic activities are picking up. So I feel that if normal economic activities picked up, then you will find that we are back to pre-COVID situation. Then in the usual way, whatever safety net, whatever welfare schemes we have, they are already getting expanded over time, particularly during this government. You just find even health insurance up to 5 lakh rupees. And people are getting advantage of this. I come from rural area, I meet people, I talk to them. Where you got your operation done? It cost so much. I know your economic condition. So they tell me, अब सरकार देती है इस चीज़ों के पैसे. So you just find that there is increase because this government is strictly following the goal of inclusive development. सबका साथ, सबका विकास. So this is what need to be done when country is progressing, economy is moving higher and higher, except for this COVID kind of situation. Everybody has a right in these gains, and this government is balancing that those who grow on their own, they should contribute a little more for those who are not getting that kind of good opportunity. So this is how I would say that social safety nets, scholarships for people of underprivileged, medical assistance, PDS, employment, houses for houseless people, toilet for those people who can't afford it, free kind of subsidized gas connection. There are so many welfare schemes of this government that you just find that whatever our means. You see, some people may say in USA they are giving so much.
Yes,
Why
sir.
we are not? We have not yet reached USA. So compared
Exactly.
to what is our per capita income, what are resources available with the government, like central government, only 99% of total income come to central government in terms of net tax, net revenue receipt.
Absolutely, sir.
Almost
And we are also
8%
seeing new
state.
schemes,
So,
new
so
measures, new steps that are being taken by the government. We've also seen increase in the budgetary allocation. But on that note, sir, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your perspective on the new agricultural reforms. Thanks a lot.
welcome.
So that's all we had for you in this edition of To The Point. Thanks for watching and stay tuned to Rajya Sabha TV.